Sean McVety. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, man.
Cool.
I am very excited to be here. I've been excited for a while. When I got your text, it meant a lot that you even think about me for this. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Man, I've been thinking about you for a long time because even though we haven't really sat down to like really get to know each other, it was very obvious that you have like a really high performer, like a high performer's mindset. And, you know, you're athletic, you're killing it at work, like all of these things, but then also just being like super kind. So I've always wanted to like get to know you a little bit better and really what makes you tick. I don't know if you know this, but I start every interview with what were you like in high school?
What was I like in high school? I should show you my ID. It's incredible. I look like a little girl, honestly. No, I'll show you. And you should add it to the podcast. But what was I like in high school? I played sports, right? Basketball primarily. This actually goes into intellectual athlete quite a bit because I had somewhat of identity crisis, because the two identities that I had kind of clashed and didn't intertwine or harmonize nicely at all. Because on one end, I was the athlete, or at least in class. I made a point to study really hard and get good grades, and I didn't think I was smart. I just worked my ass off to get good grades.
Yeah.
I thought good grades, A's meant success. So, okay, cool. In class, I was the athlete. On the basketball team, I was the nerd. It's like, well, don't really know what to do with this. So, yeah, I mean,
Were you a nerd on the basketball team and you were like teased for being a nerd because you couldn't play basketball and like do well and get good
No,
grades at the same time?
I believe that I've always been athletic, right? So that wasn't the problem, but I was the dude that had a huge backpack with 6 textbooks in his hand. Like that's
Gotcha.
right?
And was this a mental thing that you were dealing with yourself, or was it something that was actually being projected onto you by your teammates?
A little bit of both. And what really matters is what I believed, right? It's all internal. I didn't know that, and I wasn't conscious of that at the time. But yeah, I perceived myself as the nerd, and at the time, I didn't think it was cool.
Yeah.
I think being cool was getting good grades without trying.
Yeah.
But I could not do that according to my belief system.
Got it.
So,
What about
with that being said, like I enjoyed high school. Like,
You strike me as somebody that maybe had like 2 separate types of friend groups. Like you were one person one way and one person another way. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Very much so. So I have a long-standing, lifelong group of friends since 2nd grade, right? Like we're still homies to this day, and we'll always be homies. So that's that group, not athletic, right? And then I had this, my basketball teammates are just superior athletes, and for the most part didn't really care much about school. And so those were 2 different identity groups, right? And then also in the classroom, like I spent all my time in the library anyways.
Yeah.
And so with the called astute students, or the people that actually cared about getting good grades and stuff, like spent most of my time with them, honestly.
Yeah.
And having those conversations. Didn't spend much of my time really with my group of friends from childhood, nor the basketball group of friends. It's like in the library, man. Like I had to.
Really?
I had to.
Yeah. Why did
again,
you say you had to?
Because for me, again, my metric of success, my measure of success was getting grades. It didn't extend beyond that at the time.
Yeah.
I had to go to a good school. Then after school, I had to get a good job because that was the way of, like, that was my belief system.
Yeah.
Right.
Was that put there from your parents or from you?
I'm not putting it on my parents whatsoever. It's all, I'm taking ownership of it. Yeah. Right? Like, sure, there were messages explicitly and implicitly, said to me, but it's all me.
I feel like our age group, that was always the metric of success anyways, is just getting good grades and things like that.
For no particular reason.
No particular
right?
reason, no.
If I don't get an A, then I'm failing.
I vaguely remember being in high school, but I vaguely remember like thinking there was no because. Like I have to get good grades because, and like my parents didn't even go, and this isn't a knock on them or anything like that, but my parents didn't even go as far as say to get into a good college. It was just like, you have to get good grades. That was the KPI. You know what I mean? Do you remember a because for yours, or like the why behind any of that?
because I'm supposed to.
You're
Because I
supposed
should,
to.
right? Like, other than that, and the interesting part was, my parents, neither my mom or my dad, pressured me to get good grades. So there's no like external pressure on that end.
Yeah.
Family wise, it was all comparison to other students, and just this fear, irrational fear of, if I don't get good grades, then I'm failing and I'm failing in life. Like, I cannot do that.
Yeah, totally. So did you end up going to the good school afterward?
I went to UCI,
Nice.
Irvine. Enjoyed it. I appreciate
Yeah.
the campus of the school.
Yeah.
So I think that hard work did pay off in that sense. But the real self-development and improvement and blossoming of, my manhood, my character really happened, I believe, after
Yeah.
college, after school.
Was there a moment in time was there a catalyst to this, or it was just a gradual growth into who you are?
Yeah, there was definitely a catalyst. The catalyst was a moment I was just in desperation mode. Right? Like, I was not performing the way I wanted to at all. And I struggled pretty mightily with mindset. And that we'll get into that too. And yeah, I didn't perform the way I wanted to. And I was just like exhausted, dude. I was with wanting to be better, right? At life, the game of life. Like, in my mind, I was like, hey, I don't understand. And I say this in the most humbling way I possibly can. Like, I don't understand how I'm good at the things that I try. Like, I'm good at basketball. I'm good at sports. Like, apply myself to academics. I'm doing good at that. Relationships, doing good at that. But this life thing, and in my mind at the time, it was making money. And I was making jack shit, right? Like, so I don't understand if that's the metric of success in my life now, whereas before it was getting good grades, it was A's, but now it's making money. I'm not doing that, and I don't understand how I'm working so hard, but I'm knocking my head against the window every time. That was the moment I was in bed when I was just like, no fucking way. Like, I don't know what to do, but I made the decision right then and there. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I promised myself I would find whatever that was.
To make money.
At the time. Right. Or at least to be happy, man. Like, right. Like, cause I was, and it's all relative, right? But for my own sake, I was not doing well. Like, I was pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Right? So
that sounds
was
awful. You were feeling miserable because you weren't making money, and in your head at that time in your life. So let's say you're probably 23, 24, maybe. You're thinking, well, I should be making money. I'm not making money. And that led to you feeling like crap.
Yeah. Because it didn't make sense in my mind. I was like, whenever I apply myself, good things happen. But with the most important thing to me, again, right, it's very shallow surface level thinking, but it was making money. When I apply myself, the direct translation is not happening.
How are you trying to make money, though? Because in my head, I'm like, well, you could go to Del Taco and for sure now make like $18 an hour. So how are you trying to make money at that time?
At the time, a very similar mindset to, and we can go into mindset too, like the scarcity mindset, the lack mindset of the job that I was in. I was bouncing around different jobs, right? Like, that was one. Because I didn't really find, and we can also go into passion and passions as well. Yeah. How to cultivate that and find those. Because there's so many tools and exercises that I did to actually find that. But yeah, I was just bouncing around, thinking very short term, right? Like, short term cash in my pocket kind of thing, and not. And so it just didn't translate, man. Like,
what were you doing for work?
At the time, real estate, as an agent, as a realtor, and then I got into mortgages. But it was all because, and look, like, looking back, I appreciate the people that helped me, the mentors that helped me, the experiences. But I was doing it because I thought I should be doing it, right? Like, not because I wanted to do it. Right? Like, and then looking back, what I know now is what unlocks it all is when you really enjoy the work. And what I mean by work is you enjoy the effort that comes with the work and the pain that comes with the work naturally, inevitably. Like, once you actually enjoy the pain of the work, then it's game over. Yeah. You don't worry about money. You don't worry about anything else. It's like, you worry about creating. Yeah. And creating naturally, money's going to find you. Right? It's going to be attracted to you.
I think that's that's 100% true. And I feel like some of this transformation happened recently with you, because I want to say that up until maybe last year or a year and a half ago, I can't remember when we met, you were still in mortgages and real estate. Is that right?
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then you had this epiphany where you just needed to change. We met up in my office and you're like, look, something needs to change. And you started kind of going through that process, not necessarily with like, you know, I don't know if at that time you had a clear vision of where you were going, but I could tell that you had like an idea and an inkling of the direction that you needed to go to, and maybe just needed some people to like, you know, kind of steer you a little bit.
That was you.
There was more than me. I can't take any credit for that.
Oh, take the credit.
No. I always kind of feel like, first of all, thank you, but I always kind of feel like, yeah, coaches coach, but the players are the ones that are actually doing the work, right? So the fact that you did it is a testament in itself, number one.
Thank you.
But for one, I want to talk about that moment, where you were like, tomorrow I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? Because I think that's so crucial. So many of us like sit there and be like, something needs to change, and they never get up and do the thing.
Yep.
What was the thing that made you get up and call your whoever it was, and like finally change that thing around?
Yeah. And getting into those precise moments of, look, anything like the way in which we're going to change our behavior is either severe pain or pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the two. The pleasure pulls you or pain drives you away. And for me, fear and discomfort and pain, I'm obsessed with these concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the discomfort and the pain of, look, if I'm being true and honest with myself, this mortgage stuff, again, like I appreciate the experiences, the companies, the people, the teams, but this is not for me. I know it's not for me, right? And so I was seeing success, right? But at the same time, there's no fulfillment. And so the moment that you're talking about, and it's cool because you have these moments in life, these iterations of the same thing, but just as a different kind of version of yourself. I follow Seth Godin pretty closely,
Nice.
the author. The Dip, for you guys listening, get it. The Dip, and the subtitle of the book is a little book that tells you when to quit and when to stick, right? And so in the book, it's like 110 pages, it's very short. But he describes this phenomenon called the dip, and I'll just put it for anyone's journey, especially with the entrepreneurial journey, right? The dip is the lowest point. Like in the journey itself, there's going to be highs, lows, there's going to be peaks, and there's going to be valleys, right? And the dip, in his words, is the lowest point where you struggle the absolute most, right? And that inflection point is when, look, if this is the work you're meant to do, that valley, that dip is here for your advantage, right? Because the harder it gets, the more it insulates you from the rest of the competition, right? Like when it gets hard, you want to lean in more, and you love the pain of the work. You love the struggle. You love that. That's what separates you, right? The more challenging it gets, the more you separate. The wider that gap gets between you and the competition. Versus a cul-de-sac. So the cul-de-sac is the antithesis of the dip. And the cul-de-sac is the same inflection point, the same valley, but it's along a journey that probably not the best for you, right? Like you know, and so what he's saying is like, okay, when you reach a cul-de-sac, as quickly as possible, just quit. Like quit. Quitting is a good thing. Like quitting is different, in my opinion, than giving up. Giving up is giving up on yourself. Quitting is like, if there's nothing beyond, like, if there's nothing meaningful to this journey, in a sense, if there's not something that you really want to do, quit. Like there's no shame in quitting at all. But versus a journey that you know you're gonna make a difference in this world, like that, you want the dip. You want as many dips as you could possibly find. Man.
Yeah.
Create the dip.
Yeah.
So that was that was very long-winded, but to answer your question, read that book again. I love coming back to books again and reading it from a different perspective. So I literally read that book, threw it on bed, and emailed this crazy email to my mental performance coach. Like I've had a mental performance coach for 5 years or so, and we've gotten very, very close. And so I hit him up. I was like, and I was like very angry with myself. I was like, I've settled this entire time. Because part of the book is one of the last lines is, you are more powerful than you think, act accordingly.
Mm.
Right. And so I just closed the book. I'm like, mediocrity, average, like settling. These 3 words just like looped in my mind. And I was like, there's no.
And you
no
felt
way.
like that's what you were doing?
Yeah.
Oof.
And so I was like, my coach's name is Trevor. I was like, Trevor, there's no effing way I'm going to settle and be mediocre. So I use him as accountability. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to quit mortgages. And the following week on Monday, I was like, hey, I'm done. And I'll figure out, like, I burn the boats. And that's kind of the only way I know how to function and operate is burn the boats. If I have a safety net, I'm going to use a safety net. Right. And so, that was the inflection point for me. Man.
That's pretty interesting. I tell people often, they're like, when should I quit my job and like focus on my side hustle or whatever, turn that into a business? I was like, probably immediately. They're like, should I save up money? I was like, no, because there's never going to be enough money to make you feel safe. I don't think, you know what I mean? I had the advantage of getting fired from my job. And that's how like Blue Light started, is because they found out that I started a side hustle. So I didn't really have a choice. I guess I could have gotten another job, but I was like, well, I have this thing. I might as well just try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just made rent that month, then made rent the second month. And then the third month, I don't know if I made rent. Might have had to borrow money, but we'll see.
But you found a way, right? You always find a way.
Yeah. And for you, it seems like you kind of just made this clean cut too. So I'd love to learn about like, okay, for one, how did you start to... Let's break it up in 2 parts. First part, how did you start to discover what would actually fulfill you? And how did you start to discover what would actually fulfill you?
Yeah, I love that question. And that comes back to passion, right? Like growing up, getting asked, hey, like, what's your passion? Like, I had no idea. Like, what do you mean with my, like, it was just a question that I didn't know how to answer. It was such a loaded question. And so actually during quarantine, during COVID, one of my favorite authors, Alex Banayan, who wrote The Third Door, he so generously held these mentor sessions over Zoom every single day for 40 plus days.
Wow.
It was very intimate, very sensitive. And we got to know each other, became friends around the world. And so one of the exercises that he challenged us on was the 30-day passion challenge, right? And so what that is okay, let's dissect the meaning of passion, right? Like, it's what really excites you, right? And so the challenge was every day find 10 minutes to answer 3 questions. What excited me today? What drained me of energy today? Which is really important, right? Because that discards and removes and eliminates so much. And what's left is what you got to chase. And then the third one is, what did I learn today? And then it's just like building any habit, right? Like over the course, so just commit to 30 days. That's all it is. And then over the course of 30 days, you'll find common patterns between what excited me today and what did I learn today. And then those intersections kind of is where you find your ikigai. Like ikigai is a Japanese term of like where your skills and where your excitement is.
Ikigai?
Ikigai.
So it's like your zone of genius, maybe.
Yeah. Where all those intersect, right?
Wow.
Like,
so when you were doing this for 30 days, you asked yourself, what excites me, what drained me, and what did I learn? Those are great questions to ask. What were some of the things that excited you over the course of that 30 days?
Yeah.
Other than that meeting with me, I'm sure that was like number 1 top. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I actually did this exercise for the first time, at least in 2020. And yeah, every single day, what excited me was exercising, writing, which we can talk about too. I want to know your creative writing process, by the way.
It's just pain.
Yeah. Exercise, writing, psychology, and then it got into like mind-body connection, mind-body relationship, mind-muscle connection, and then I was like, oh shit, sports psychology. What is this? Exercise psychology. Like I remember, like, intuitively I knew what it felt like, but I didn't really understand and realize that you can actually build a profession within sports psychology and exercise psychology. So then once I found out sports psychology. I just went on a hunt and just cold called all these professionals and experts in sports psychology and exercise psychology, and was like, hey, how'd you get to where you are? Like, just tell me. I'm some dude in Laguna Niguel, just really want to learn. And then there's more to it, but that's, to answer your question, that's how I found the intersection and how I found this is what I'm meant to do.
What was the thing that drained you? Mortgages?
No joke. I wrote mortgages, and nothing against the companies, but like mortgages like drain the hell out of.
I can completely like empathize with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, there are certain things.
Yeah.
It's a blessing, but at the same time, it just hurts that like to do it.
Oh, trust me. So. I worked so hard on just making it more enjoyable, but it was just hitting a wall. So like, all right, at some point, like just surrender to the fact that mortgages isn't for you.
Yeah.
And so mortgages, overthinking, I remember was one. Yeah, I don't know, but
can we take a moment and appreciate like this silence that has happened? To the listener, you probably couldn't hear it, but there is a strike going on outside. Whistles, sirens, banging on pots and pans. It is wild, dancing, screaming, and it's been going on up until like about 3 minutes ago. And all of a sudden, I'm like in such a better mood. I can focus so much more.
I did not even notice.
Oh, I know, you're locked in, and so that's what I'm gonna get into that, because I'm like, you clearly have like a great mindset, because you can block out all of that stuff going on and still be here right now. But anyways, so it wasn't until I believe like the year after, was it the year after or 2022 when you finally did actually make a jump and start focusing in on that stuff, right?
Yeah. So that was 2020, end of 2020, 21, still in mortgages, right? Except now I'm a little bit more fulfilled because the company is different. And this is another cool inflection point, right? Like within the company, we would hold these sessions, company-wide sessions about, like, a lot of it was mindset, right? Like, and that's when I told the president of the company at the time, like dude, like that's when I light up. So there's something here, obviously. And then I asked, I started a mental performance division within the company because I was like, hey, keep doing what you're doing with the boring mortgages, but at the same time, like, start something that you're very passionate and interested and excited to do.
Yeah.
And see if it's effective and see if it helps people. And it really did. Like, I would get these messages, being like, hey, that was so cool and so meaningful. It would be like an early morning session. And so that was kind of like my mini proof of concept. I was like, okay, I did it internally with a few people, like very, very, very few, like 20, 30 people. And then, but not only am I helping other people, it just lit me up every morning.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, I have proof of concept there. And then the dip happened again, reading the dip. I was like, let's hit it.
Yeah.
And I hit you up. You helped me up. You helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
No.
I feel
people
weird.
He did.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you for that. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, you did the thing, man, and it's great to see you. I see you on social, and you're and then I don't hear from you as well, which is awesome, because typically when I don't hear from people, that means they're focused. You know what I mean? And so I know that you're focused on that, and now that's you doing the intellectual athlete, right? That is now 100% of your focus, and you're feeling lit up all the time.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Very much so.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about like the intellectual athlete. I'm not butchering the name of this, am I?
You're not at all.
Okay, perfect.
Saying it perfectly. Intellectual athlete. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like the smart runner. Just kidding.
Exactly. Yeah. So over the course of, a few months, I just played around with different words, language, and those two really helped me. Going back to like I told you, my identity crisis, right? Like being the intellectual and being the athlete and not knowing like where, which one am I, kind of thing. So I started Intellectual Athlete, and it's a mental performance coaching business, right? And so it just lights me up, man, like helping individuals on a one-on-one basis, just find blind spots and talk about mindset.
Yeah.
Because, there's a quote that comes to mind by Shane Parrish, and it's sooner or later you realize that everything comes down to mindset. Like sooner or later, you realize that everything comes down to mindset. Every moment, every experience, every conversation, every relationship, business or personal, like every single thing comes down to mindset, right?
Yeah.
So as an intellectual athlete, I've actually learned over the course. So I started this business in October of last year, right? November last year. So it's still fairly new. And as the months go on, I've actually kind of grown in the sense that I've learned that intellectual athlete is, like I was telling you in the kitchen, right? Like it's beyond the business. Like the business is one medium and one vehicle that I can actually deliver and share the message that intellectual athlete is and the meaning of intellectual athlete,
Yeah.
right? Like intellectual athlete is a mindset. Intellectual athlete is an intentional lifestyle and way of being, right? And so it was funny. I was actually at the Nike store the other day, and behind the cashier, there's a quote by Bill Bowerman, and said, "If you have a body, you are an athlete," right?
Mm.
And we assume that identity, right? Like if you have a body, you are an athlete. If you have a mind, you are an intellectual, right? And we luckily have both, so we are the intellectual athlete.
Yeah.
And so we can assume that identity. We can carry that wherever we go, right, at any moment. And that's what truly lights me up when I see that inflection point in my clients, like in those conversations, right? Like, and speaking to teams, like that's the coolest part, man.
Yeah.
Like that's why.
Did you at any point realize that like intellectual athlete also speaks to who you were when you were growing up?
That's why I started it, man. Yeah. I mean, why I started it, I should have started with this. So I came up with the saying, it's choose your state of mind. It just takes practice, right? And the reason I came up with that is because when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I struggled mightily with mindset, right? Like in the sense that mindset to me was something I did not control. I had a passive reactive relationship with my own mindset, where like if I happen to be in a very weak mindset, all right, suffer through it, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and if I happen to be in a great mindset, cool. It's probably going to turn into a suffering one here pretty soon. And so I struggled with it. But as soon as I realized and learned and appreciated that we have complete control over our mindset, like complete control, we can actually choose our state of mind. Yes, we're gonna experience dips in motivation and drive and energy. Completely natural. That's inevitable, and that's completely okay. And we should actually cherish those moments too. At the same time, when we do get into those low moments, we have the ability and we have our choice to lift ourselves up and to get into a stronger state of mind. And so choose your state of mind really resonates with me, and it's something I hold so dearly to my, to my heart. And then that's one end, right? And like the second part, it just takes practice. It's just a reminder that like with anything, it's intentional and focused repetition. And like the more you repeat it, make it a habit, like it'll become unconscious, man. Like, and it goes back to growth mindset too. It's when you can always improve, you can always do better.
Yeah.
Like that's a choice, man.
So mindset, like the idea of mindset on its surface seems a little vague. People are like, oh yeah, mindset matters. But that's a broad term. Dealing with some of the clients that you've worked with in the past or currently work with, what are some of the mindsets that they currently have that they're changing? Like what are some of the most common mindsets that are holding them back from their full potential, that you're helping them address?
For the most part, I would say, look, these guys that come to me, when they're driven, right? Guys and girls, driven. It's just that I wouldn't say they're suffering with performance or struggling with performance as much as they, in their own perception, is that they are, right? Like they want to do better. But the key thing here is that they're all driven. They want to be their best selves, right? That's one. That's a mindset in its own right? And then I guess the two most frequent mindsets that they come to me struggling with are like scarcity mindset, right? Like as opposed to growth mindset.
Sure.
That things that are out of their control or within their control are fixed, and there's nothing to improve upon. So that's one. And then the other one's like victim mentality. I get like That's the basis of our initial conversations. That's what we address and go deeper into. And the cool part is, man, like when that shifts, right, like into, no, man, like it's our responsibility to choose the strong state of mind that we want to be in.
Yeah.
And take ownership of it.
Yeah. That's one of the bigger things that I learned when I kind of started on this journey, which was maybe 10 years ago now. I had this sales manager that was like all about Tony Robbins, and I thought it was just like a load of crap. And then I got fired from my job. I needed to start my thing, and I read Awaken the Giant Within. I don't know. Tony's the OG, period. You know what I mean? For me, anyways. And the
guy knows what he's doing, for sure.
He knows what he's doing, I think. And then he says within that, you know, the circumstance that you're in is a direct reflection of every decision you've made up until that point. And I've completely butchered that, but that quote, but it's something that I live by. It's like, I'm sitting in this seat because of decisions that I've made, not because like somebody made me sit in this seat. Right. Mm-hmm. I was telling you about some of the issues I was dealing with over the last year and a half or so. Those were decisions that I've made as well. You know, you can't blame it on other people. And that alone changed so much. I think that's truly where like trajectory in life just started going up, is taking full accountability for where you were. You know what I mean? But I think that not only will people blame circumstance, but they have a tendency to blame like there's maybe a quality within themselves, or maybe it's circumstance or a lack of resource. You were talking about that earlier, and I'm like, actually, all this stuff is right here. It's just about, and maybe this is kind of what you're talking about, is just like having that mindset that there are resources available for people.
Endless resources, right? The problem is not a lack of resources, especially for you and I, especially for where we live in Orange County, California. Yeah. It's ridiculous. We have resources. The problem is, with myself too, it's a lack of resourcefulness, is using and utilizing and leveraging those resources to our advantage. The people, the places, the ideas, the conversations, everything. In
your work, I think you hit it right on the head. In your work, it's about a lack of, and not in your work, but some people have a lack of resourcefulness, right? But in your work, where do you see that coming from? Why do they have a lack of resourcefulness? It doesn't personally make sense to me. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't play in that mindset anymore, so I don't understand it. But what have you seen? Why are people like not resourceful? Or why do they choose to not be resourceful?
I think it's, and I relate to it because I used to be this way. I didn't understand, right? Like again, we're driven, we're trying, but I didn't really understand. And the people that come to me, the guys and girls that come to me, don't necessarily know how to wrap their head around the concept of resourcefulness. It's like, and being attuned to what's around you, your surroundings, your environment, right? You know, like, and being receptive to when those things come, when the resources come to you, like are in front of you, to actually be ready and prepared actually jump on those opportunities.
So you're like helping them identify that there are things to help them around there, as opposed to like maybe where that problem comes from.
Yeah. And like,
which is probably good.
With anything too, like as a coach, aside from accountability, that's a powerful tool in its own right. It's just providing a different perspective too, right? Like, there's a saying like, when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label, right? Like when you're so much in your shit, like you just zoom out a little bit, like take a moment to pause and just see what's actually there.
What is what's your hack for zooming out?
My hack for zooming out for myself?
Yes.
I just breathe, man. I've been getting into meditation, which has really helped me in so many different ways. It took me a long time to actually build that habit, to be honest with you. But yeah, breathe, have conversations, because talking to you, like having a conversation with you, that you challenge me to think differently and get outside my mind, which that in its own right is so precious, so special.
It's so Mr. Miyagi like. I think, okay, so everybody knows I'm a big Star Wars fan, but I actually think Mr. Miyagi has one up over Yoda. Hot take.
Agreed.
Like Mr. Miyagi is like, in the chaos of life, focus on the center of life, and that's your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, and then it clears everything out for you. So the fact that you're reiterating that actually just shows how true it is, because I think Mr. Miyagi maybe said that 35 years ago now. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And talk about resources. This body that we can actually use to breathe is where it's with us wherever we are, man. Like, so it's right here. Everything's right here.
So mindset, I think that, going back to what you were talking about in the coaching aspect of it, you choose to be in a mindset, maybe when you start your day, but then things start coming at you. Maybe, you have problems at work, you have a spouse that you're not getting along with at that time, whatever the case is, you break a leg, unfortunately, like, God forbid, that type of thing. How do you continue to stay in that mindset? Because those are some of the things that somebody will deal with, and it's all relative, can be really detrimental to somebody's mindset, and it's hard to stay there.
Yeah. And those are the inevitabilities of life, right? Like, external stimuli, it's going to come your way, and that's totally cool. For me, I like to remind myself and my clients and other people, just focus on what you control, right? Like, all that external stuff is outside of our control, and that's completely okay, right? Like, the quote that comes to mind again is Viktor Frankl, right? Like, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and within that space is our power to choose our response, and within our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's going to be external stimulus coming your way. There's going to be shit out of your control that's going to come your way, distractions. The people outside with the strikers, that's cool, but we can always focus on what we control. We still had this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just reminding yourself of that over and over and over again. And then in a way that'll help you reframe the actual situation and go from, disliking this circumstance to, oh, this is actually showing me something that maybe I need to address. Again, something within my control, right? So it's all where our focus lies.
Yeah.
Right. It's like focus on what we control.
What are your thoughts on toxic positivity?
I understand it's a thing, right? Toxic positivity, right? Like, I believe in neutrality, right? Like, I believe that, again, we have highs and we have lows, we have peaks and we have valleys. And I think being positive is great. I know that attitude is something that we control, right? Attitude is a mindset in its own right, and we can show up our best at any moment of any day, right? Like, whatever our best looks like in the moment. And showing up, to me, is what we should focus on, rather than, positivity. If it's fake positivity, if it's ingenuine, people around you will notice that, right? So I do think I always come back to being neutral, like, and that comes back to that quote, between stimulus and response, there's a space. It's coming to your body and breathing and coming to neutral, and like, okay, I'm neither positive nor am I negative, but what's the next right step that I can take? Right? Like, that's all.
I love what you said. Show up the best that you can in that moment. So you're not comparing yourself to yesterday, and you're not comparing yourself to your potential. You're literally just the best you can in that moment. That seems like something that a lot of people, and by a lot of people I mean myself specifically, can really use, because because of the ebbs and flows of life, right? So can you talk to me a little bit about that concept of showing up the best you can in that moment, as opposed to, no, yesterday I crushed the 4:30 a.m. workout, and then I did 9 hours in the office, and then I made dinner, and I did this. It has to be like that every single day. How does somebody deal with the fact that they probably maybe physically can't do it the next day, and just like staying in the moment, like, this is the best I could today? It's such a strange concept, because I feel like it's a slippery slope to making excuses as to like why you're not reaching your potential,
or punishing yourself for not reaching that potential, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I struggled with too. And the more I learn, the more I begin to understand and appreciate the power of self-compassion, bro. Like, I think it all starts with self-compassion, and self-acceptance. And so many of us are super strivers of wanting to perform at our best, and we do, right? But there's a fine line, and there's a balance of striving and being compassionate towards ourselves. Like, we can do both, man, right? And so going back to that, and then toxic positivity, in my line of work, a huge buzzword is peak performance, which I appreciate, man. Like, peak performance is an apex of performance from which we can only come down, right? So we do have to understand that peak performance is not sustainable, nor is it designed to be sustainable. Peak performance is when we are in flow state, when we are the peak of our existence, and right, like we're just operating unconsciously. That's great, but that's you're going to come down. Talk about ebbs and flows, right?
Like a peak implies that there's going to be valleys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without a peak, without a valley, there's no peak, right? So like, in my mind, I think of climbing a mountain, right? Like as you ascend the mountain, you reach a peak, and when you get to the peak, there's only one way back. Like there's down, right? Like you can't ascend more. So it's time to descend. So I bring that back to peak performance. Peak performance is wonderful. Cherish it when you're there. You'll get back, but just know, the ebbs and flows will come, and the valleys will come. And so instead of peak performance, I focus on optimal performance, right? Like optimal performance is choosing, again, the word choice, and choosing to show up the best we possibly can right now with what we have, with the resources that we have at our disposal. And again, our best in the moment will at times look like peak performance. That's wonderful. At times it won't, right? It's more of like a survival rather than thrival. And it's all good. Like, keep going. Keep going. That's all it is.
I love that, man. So now where are you starting to take the intellectual athlete? Because you mentioned before we started recording that you're going from really the maybe some of the speaking engagements that you're doing, the one-on-one coaching, into more of a creative route. Did I catch that properly?
You did, yeah. You did. So yeah, initially it was strictly one-on-one. I was like, just need to get my feet wet. Like, cool. It's really fulfilling in its own right. So that's one branch, right? That's one way I kind of get into intellectual athlete in the business sense. The other way I discovered was I really love to speak. And going into different teams, learning about their teams, the struggles, what they want to focus on, and then really coming up with a message that hopefully resonates. I think that they do. And speaking is something that is a medium in which I'm really learning that I enjoy a lot. And then writing, man, it's funny. I was talking to my mom the other day, and there was something about writing that I really enjoyed as a kid. I just didn't know what. Like, I obviously didn't love the prompts about writing about like Romeo and Juliet or something like that. But like the process of writing, the creative process of writing, at the time was pencil and paper, and I really enjoyed it. I loved scratching it out. I loved rough drafts, second drafts, third drafts, giving it to any creative writing skills that I do have comes from my pops, my dad, and so I'd give it to him. He would edit it ruthlessly. I'm like, what? Like, you just like cut everything out with a red pen. So I really learned how to simplify and consolidate and really cut the fat of writing. And so I really enjoy that. And now, as a man, like, that's something that I really cherish, and it's my favorite way to think is writing.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like we're very similar that way.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So now with the writing that you're doing, is it published online? Are you starting a newsletter? Where do you see that like impacting the business, and how is that how are you using writing to fulfill your mission and fulfill yourself?
Yeah. Newsletter's in the works, so I'll let you guys know when it's officially up and launched. That's something that's been on my mind for a while, and it's something that I really enjoy doing, especially in the mornings. And right now it's publishing on Medium. Nice. Here and there. And then what I really enjoy is taking the time to be intentional with, the social posts, with the captions.
Those have been great, by the way.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I learned from the best.
Oh my gosh, stop it.
So actually, I know they're very short form writing samples, but I really enjoy that writing process of just writing that shitty first draft and then just iterating, and then being okay and confident to ship that work. Yeah, like that.
It's pressing publish is an interesting thing.
Yeah,
right. Because you're like, okay. And as the writer, it's never, for me, I don't know about you, for me, it's like, it's never how I want it to be. It's never perfect, but you're just like, meh, bump, you know what I mean? I think like something like writing a book or something like that is so interesting to me because you change so much over time. But to have something that's so permanent like that, with Instagram, we archive, but like something that's really truly publish like that, it's interesting because it's like the person I was 10 years ago, while the values might be the same, and I don't even know if they are, there are certain values that are the same. I'm not necessarily the same person. You know what I mean? And just pressing publish, it's like putting a stamp on a moment in time and how you thought, what you believed, the message that you wanted to share with the world. I don't necessarily want to share the same things today that I did, 10 years ago. I'm actually less apt to share those thoughts now, to be honest. So yeah, writing's an interesting thing. Anybody that creates content at all and like lets the internet see it, it seems like nothing, but to me, I think it's actually a big deal. It takes a lot of courage to press post,
Dude, confidence is the willingness to try.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what hitting publish is.
Yeah.
Right. And going back to your point of perfection is unrealistic. It doesn't exist. Right. So I think that's the beauty of writing too, because it's never going to be perfect. But that's the cool part. And you have the courage and the confidence to actually, this is good enough. Do it. Because in 1 month, in 6 months, in a year, in 10 years from now, I'm going to read this back and it's going to be complete shit.
Yeah.
But like that shows the growth and the transformation of you as a writer and as a man, as a dad, as a human,
Yeah.
So it's cool. That's my favorite part of it. It's just a public version of a diary. That's right. Like that's all it is.
Yeah.
And it helps people, man. Like everyone's thinking a lot of the same stuff, right? Like
I agree with you. In fact, when you look at a lot of these influencers, you look, and I'm not talking about like, Susie Wellness in Newport Beach. I'm talking about like
she's my friend.
She's all of our friends. You go to Moxie down the street. There's 45 of them in one class. But it's like
shout out Moxie.
But it's more of like you take the Tony Robbins, the Eric Thomas, the Mel Robbins, the all these people. They actually all say the same thing, but in their tone of voice.
Yep. And
I think that's something that I'd love to hear about from you too. Is the fact that it's like, okay, coming up with an original thought is pretty challenging, I think, but your tone of voice is what makes it different, right? So how have you started to like harness that courage to publish your own thing? Because I think it's different when you get older too. I think as we get older, we get a little bit more, there's like this point of like, I don't care, I'm going to express myself. Then we hit like our 30s to like early 30s and we're like, I kind of care. You know what I mean? Then you get past that. And then for me, I'm in complete F it mode at this point in my life, especially with like my kid here. I'm like, oh, I actually don't care about what anybody thinks that much. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, my parents, probably my like close friends and colleagues, but like outside of that, I'm like, I'm going to just do whatever I want now, within reason. I don't want to hurt anybody, but like, you know what I'm saying? So how have you started to like get that courage for yourself to press post more often?
Going back to inflection points, right? You're saying your son is one of those for you, or like in comparison to that, like who cares if you have good intentions, which you do all the time. So for me, it was again the discomfort. There we go again.
It started. I feel like I'm stronger now than when we started. Like we got that little bit of a break, and I'm like, no, I can take another 20 minutes of that. Go ahead.
Soothing. Keep going.
Yeah.
We were talking about the pain and the discomfort of when I was true and honest with myself, being like, am I following my intuition? Am I listening to my intuition? Am I being my true self? And when I wasn't, all right, there comes a point where like it's utter exhaustion of just be yourself, man. Like you have good intentions, and share that. And actually the power came from just doing it. Right? Like fear exists. It's cool. Like I acknowledge that, but leaning into that fear, appreciating that fear, and recognizing that fear that we all have, that everyone, it exists in everyone, is here for a reason, and it's here for a good reason, and just using that fear to actually do what your heart is telling you to do. And for me, in a lot of respects, that's writing. I'm in hitting publish, right? Like that's all it is, man. Like I come back to a quote too. Boyd Vardy, my definition of mastery is someone who can be themselves in any situation. And that's so simple, but it's so profound, right? Like that's actually hard to do.
Yeah.
Like genuinely being yourself, true to yourself, authentically, genuinely, and getting vulnerable, like, and surrendering to that vulnerability is difficult to do. But I think that the more you do it, not only do you grow yourself, but you encourage others to do the same thing. And I think that's where the power is, right? Like inspiring others, influencing others to do that, because everyone wants to be themselves.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think you've shared so many great like pieces of advice for us, like not knowing, and just your path in itself is really inspiring. I think it's important that people hear the story that you have, because there are a lot of people who are sitting there and they're not asking themselves in the morning, what's the thing that got me excited? What drained me? And what did I learn today? You know, and I think those 3 fundamental questions that you shared with us is something that can really shape the trajectory of somebody's path. So thank you for sharing that with us. Before I ask the last question of the day, though, if somebody wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
My cell phone? No, I'm kidding. Social media, all the, what do you call those? Handles are just at Sean McVety. That's SeanMcvety. Going back to Moxie, just find me on Moxie. Yeah, that's where you find
Imagine
me.
that could be scary.
Yeah.
I wish I was cool enough, or we were cool enough to where like, oh, some person from like Idaho came to Moxie to see you. That'd be kind of weird.
I'm not that cool, bro.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Last question for the day. Super simple. It's super simple. I try to like take a step back, not be so serious and heavy with it, but still stay on topic. If you were to say that you had a superpower, what would that superpower for you be?
Superpower. My superpower is choosing to show up. Attitude, right? It's simple as that too. It's wherever you are, with whoever you're with. I always go into every conversation the best I can with a clear intention. And how I want, like today, like this morning, I asked myself, I believe that the power of our questions determine the trajectory of our life, right? Like, how do I want Mikhail to feel today? Like, that's what I asked myself. And so having a clear intention going into any environment, any circumstance, any conversation, and from the answer to that question, how do you want that other person or people to feel? Show up. Just show up. Right? Like, that's all it is. Show up.
Yeah.
The best you can, whatever best looks like and feels like.
That's amazing. Appreciate that. I don't know if I'm supposed to look at the camera now that we have one, but to the listener, thank you so much for your time and attention. We really appreciate it. And the viewer. And if you loved the episode, we would dig a 5-star review. If you didn't like it that much, feel free to stick it to us, but subscribe anyway, because we're going to have a ton of incredible people just like Sean McVety back on the show. Thanks again, Sean.
I appreciate you, bro, so much. Thank you.